Ruchika. She has beautifully captured our intent behind this conference. And to begin with, I'd like to introduce our guest of honor, Dr. Ashok Khosla. He's the founder of Development Alternatives. But more importantly, I'd like to tell you a little about him. He's a PhD holder from Harvard University in experimental physics. But what he's known for is basically popularizing the term sustainable development across the world. In the UN circles, if I call him the father of sustainable development, it won't be an understatement in any way, overstatement in any way. So there couldn't have been a more apt guest of honor for this event, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to join us, sir. I'd like to invite you on the stage, and please. If you're comfortable, sir, we can also address. Can we please have his presentation?
First, please welcome him with a huge round of applause, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a great privilege to be here at this amazing event, Casca, and I want to thank the organizers and the supporters of this organization for having made this arrangement, which I am very grateful for being able to share a few thoughts with you about the issues of climate change on the one hand and the circular economy on the other, both of which are really related to each other in a very, very inexorable kind of way. What I would like to talk to you about is actually more than the circular economy, about resource efficiency. The reason is very simple. Climate change is caused by the emission of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are emitted largely by using fossil fuels. And the idea of using fuels over the last 2.5 centuries has been essentially to move materials, to move things, locomotives and goods and services and people. And resources, material resources, actually are the reason why we need so much energy. So in order to reduce the impact on climate, we're going to have to reduce the use of energy, particularly fossil energy. And in order to do that, you need to have a direct impact on what we might call resource efficiency. Resource efficiency is doing more with less of materials. And what I'm going to talk about is circular economy as one means of doing that. And there are many other means that I would also like to touch on. What I would like to share with you is that each one of us can actually make a very big difference on an issue that is really global, climate. Climate change and biodiversity loss, extinction of species, are the big threats to humankind, to our civilization, to our species, to life actually on Earth. If we are going to have a future for life on Earth, then we have to do things differently. And each one of us sitting in this room, and maybe our families and the people we relate to, have a responsibility in doing that. The first thing I thought I would tell you is how fast things are changing. If you look at India alone, which is only 1/5 of the world, our population has grown in the last 50 years by a factor of 2, more than 2, 2.2. Our basic use of resources has, for example, in construction materials, has gone up in that 50 years by a factor of 12. We're using cement, concrete, mud, bricks, wood, 12 times as much as we used to use in, say, 1970. And the ores that we mine, the minerals for all our factories and all our appliances and so on, has gone up by a factor of 5. And the fossil fuels we're using have gone up by a factor of 6. And the biomass, forests and wood and all the vegetable materials we use has gone up by a factor of 2. So we're really actually in a pretty dire strait because India, in fact, is going to be needing a lot more in the next 50 years. And our growth is because of population, which is leveling off in the south of India, but not in the north, and the economy growing rapidly with so-called modernization, more appliances, more vehicles, more transport, and we're demanding more and more. And this is a graph of all the countries in the world. As they get richer, they use more and more resources. And if you look at where we are in India, you will see basically that we're at the beginning of a long journey of expecting to grow more and more, and hopefully we will be better than the other countries. For the 21st century, we can't ignore the fact that we will have more population, more per capita consumption, more poverty and hunger, more inequality and social tension, and degradation of lands and soils. We are in for a lot of trouble unless we change the way that we're doing things. So here we are, a country that is actually two countries, all at the same place at the same time. One of them is called India, as rich and well off and materially comfortable as Europe, and Bharat, which is actually living more or less like sub-Saharan Africans do, with very great deal of poverty. And you have, in the case of India, modern facilities, we're in the space age, there are 500 million people, more than the whole of Europe, living extremely well. We could call this a consumption society. Beautiful homes, shopping plazas, mobile phones, electric vehicles, and everything else. But it comes at the expense of mining the earth and improving what we call efficiency by simply dumping our wastes and our pollution into the global commons, into the lives of other people. And what we're basically doing is creating a chaotic form of development where we're paying through use of wasting time for what we consider to be a better life. This is a picture of an area where my organization works in central India. It's called Bundelkhand. And it's an area in a district, small district of India, one of the smallest districts, called Datia. Now, this piece of land used to belong to the Maharaja of Datia. And in the 1930s, he wrote in his diary, went out for a tiger shoot, couldn't enter the forest, it was too thick, too much teak and bamboo, and they came home for tea instead. And this is where it is now. We have basically obliterated a large part of our country, and according to the UN, we're growing about 10,000 square kilometers of desert every year. We don't call it that, we call it wastelands because it sounds better, but euphemisms aren't going to get us out of trouble. So the fact of the matter is we are heading for a lot of trouble on wastes, on land degradation, on loss of forests and everything else. And then there is the other part of India, which is called Bharat, 800 million people, that's one of the largest populations in the world, and they live in a subsistence society. Same time and same area as those consumption people, but these people live in very dire straits. I show you this picture because it's also from Bundelkhand, and this family strikes me as being epitome of a very large number of families in my country and your country. That woman has in this picture virtually everything she owns. One might say her whole world is in that picture. And one might say, Bachare, you were really very sad for their plight they're in, but can you imagine the national loss? That little girl, one of those little girls might have been another Lata Mangeshkar, or a Marie Curie, a scientist, or a dancer. And she has nothing, no hope. It's a loss to the nation. It's not a loss to that family only, it's a loss to our whole nation, what we're doing to our people. And that's 800 million people who basically are outside the mainstream economy and have no hope. So we need to look at the fact that they live very difficult lives. About 100 million people in our country don't have clean drinking water. We have an income distribution which one might call the champagne glass theory of economy. The top 20% earn something like 80% of the income of this country, and the bottom half probably gets about 6 or 7%. Clearly, that's not a very good thing to be looking at. And this gap is, by the way, is widening. In fact, from a champagne glass, it's gone to a bar stool. A stool where you can have, we don't measure 20/80, we measure 99/1. 99% of the wealth goes to 1% of the people. And gradually, we're getting so close that it's going to be 0.1% of the country that grabs virtually all its wealth. And that is really a major source of threat to what we call sustainable futures. So you all know about the ecological footprint. I won't go into it in detail, but essentially it's the amount of land that each one of us requires to sustain us. It's around 0.8 hectares of land is needed to sustain each one of us. The products of that land, food, water, clothing, everything else. And in India, what we are doing essentially is using up roughly 1.6 times the area of our country to support the population. Now, you may well say, how can you do that? Well, any banker will tell you that if you got money in the bank, you can keep drawing down your savings, but at the bottom, when you finish all your savings, there's nothing left. But until you have some savings, which Mother Nature gave us right from the beginning, we're drawing them down at an enormous rate. And as you can see, at the moment, we're really at 1.7 or so. India's in there. So we have terrific, rapid changes going on, technology, economy, geopolitics, awareness of people about all the things that they could and want, and that's the aspirations, and of course, about our resource limits. So we need to get from a situation, like most countries, of being dirty and poor to becoming rich and clean. And that goes through a hump called the Kuznets curve. And what we need to do is to try and tunnel through it so that we don't have to do what other countries had to do over 2 centuries of going gradually to become rich enough to be able to get rid of the pollution that they had to create. We need to become rich and clean straight away. And that means we have to think and do things differently. Our development pathways, our development trajectory has to be such that we take care of nature and our environment at the same time as we take care of our wealth and our material resources. So this means that we've got to now actually probably go into a little bit of increasing consumption, but gradually bring it down to a level where we decouple the impact between wealth and creation of pollution and the impacts on the world. To do that, we have these circular economy ambitions, which is to bring climate change under control, which means decarbonization, which can be done through changes in our use of land and water and materials and the production of wastes. And we do this through what we call decoupling. Decoupling is, what I said earlier, is a question of resource efficiency. And how do you do that? Well, circular economy and resource efficiency is about the 7, 8, 9, 10 R's. The ones that are my favorites are refuse to do something you don't need to do, rethink and reduce what you do, reuse what you have, recycle, and use renewable energies. And then you can go further and refurbish things that you've got, like your car or your air conditioner or your washing machine, remanufacture it. If you can design it right from the beginning, after 10 years, send it back to the factory, and it'll come back as good as new in the most modern model that you need. And repurpose what you have and recover from these what you can. This applies to clothes, it applies to appliances, it applies to houses, it applies to everything. I show you this picture because it is the headquarters of my own organization. It's just south of IIT Delhi. It's a building built with almost entirely with waste materials and recycled materials. We recycled the whole of the previous building that was in the site after demolishing it. And in addition, we use about 70% of that building is made out of fly ash, which is a horrible waste produced by thermal power stations. And it has virtually no virgin materials in it. It has very little use of energy and water systems. It doesn't, with due apologies to my co-panelist here, it doesn't actually need air conditioning because it's designed to be naturally cool in the summer and naturally warm in the winter. So this is the building, and you will see that we save huge amounts, 30 to 50% of steel, cement, bricks, and wood in making it. And a large part of it, as I said, is recycled materials, and a large part of it is from industrial wastes. We developed the whole technology for doing that, and that includes this Balram, which is a manual press to make compressed earth buildings, bricks which are not fired. So you save a huge amount of energy, therefore you have much less impact on climate. These are other technologies that we have. The small dam, which we call check dams, have a huge impact on local economies. In fact, the return on investment on that dam on the right, top right is something of the order of 600% per year. You spend 10 lakhs of rupees making that dam, and you get roughly 6 times as much money just in additional crops. On top of the crops, you have water in the groundwater, in the aquifer, recharged so the women don't have to walk hours and hours for water. You have fish, which you can improve the protein intake of the local people. You have recreation, little kids can swim in there. And basically, it's a transformation of the local economy. For a very small amount of money, you can actually make a huge difference. On the top left is a factory that we have in the same region, in Bundelkhand, where women make handmade recycled paper. The one below that over here is making roofing tiles, also from waste materials. And the one on the bottom right is a very advanced, world-class handloom technology, which we developed called the Tara loom, and that basically increases a weaver's earnings by a factor of 4 overnight with 8 hours of retraining. So these are the kinds of things you can do, and all of them have a huge impact on the climate because they're using much less material and much less energy. New kinds of agriculture, for example, which have much lower impact. Vermicomposting, making worms do all your work for you instead of big factories. And as I say, most of this depends on good application of good science, good technology, and local energies. Local people using their innovative spirit to find solutions. This is a part of Bundelkhand we took a picture of about 30 years ago. And within a short time, literally a few months, we basically managed to create a place where we could keep the cattle out by making a trench outside it and keep every drop of water in with contour trenches all the way up. And at the end of the, and those are the contour trenches. And you can see what an impact you can have. Literally, in 15 months, you can create a forest by natural regeneration. We didn't have to plant a single tree. It's nature that actually is so vibrant and so powerful that it comes right back if you give it a chance. So these are the kinds of things we do. We use the 5 kingdoms of nature. All of you remember from school that there's animals and plants and fungi and algae and bacteria. If you put them all to work, you can actually get nature to do most of your work for you. And again, with due apologies to my fellow panelists, this is the termite doing its work for you. The termite has a queen, and the queen has to be kept at about 23.6 degrees throughout the year. And in order to do that, the termites have a very sophisticated airflow mechanism, little channels throughout that tower, termite tower, which basically can teach you how to do it for buildings. And that building next to it, on the right of it, is the most expensive building in Harare, in the capital of Zimbabwe. It's called Eastgate, and it has no air conditioners because it uses termite principles. And it's worth a lot because people are willing to pay a lot of rent for a building where they can save money. So these are the kinds of things we do. We create biomass-based power stations using what are essentially weeds. There's a weed in central India called besharam. The more you cut it, the more it grows. In fact, in Pakistan, they call it politician. So basically, it's a horrible weed, and we convert it into gas, which feeds into a diesel engine, which makes electricity. I told you about the Tara looms. Now, the most amazing thing about this factory with women, when we started it, I specified that it would be only women workers. And we hired 23 or 25 of them, and 25 were taken, and they had to be within a certain age, childbearing age, and they had to have 1 or 2 kids already. That's it. Those are the only conditions. They didn't have to have any skills, they didn't have to have any wealth or whatever else. Well, we did a study 21 years later, and we found that these women were, almost all of them were still there. One had gone and one had died, I think. One had got married and gone to another district. And between them, in those 21 years, they'd had 2 births in the factory, all total. Whereas their sisters, the same cohort in the villages, the same ages, had had 23. So there's a factor of 12 down in fertility just because they had a decent job. A job that they didn't want to lose, and they were making good money. They could look after the existing kids better. And so this is actually one of the best contraceptives in the world, a job for women. And we do a lot of this. At the moment, we are working a great deal on various types of energy and water systems and building materials, and indeed different kinds of agriculture. Now, it costs around $15 to $20 to save 1 ton of carbon through improved agriculture, what is called agroforestry. So just keep that in mind, around $15 to $20 for that. And population is growing rapidly, and one of our concerns, particularly in North India, has been how do you make people want to have smaller families? And in order for them to do that, we studied the way things are. These are peculiar maps. These maps show the parameter, which is total births, as the size of the country. In other words, the biggest country there, as you can see, is India, has the largest number of total births. The smallest countries are over here. You can see them in Europe, and they're tiny because they don't have many births. So each of my maps is proportional to the thing on top, the parameter on top. So here is the total births map, and here are the maps of illiterate women and girls not in school. And you see there's a great correlation. They're basically the same map for all of them. Whereas on the other hand, if you plot the number of the average women's income or female managers, it's totally opposite. It's anti-correlation. In other words, basically, if you want to reduce births, you've got to put girls in schools, you've got to get jobs for women, and you've got to do the opposite of the other thing, which is improve their income and so on. Well, the motivation for smaller families comes from the fact that these parameters make lives people better, and then they value their time more than they do big families. So we did a model on this, a very detailed mathematical model, and we found that the cost, you remember the cost I showed you about agroforestry, which is one of the best ones? The cost of reducing a ton of carbon saved by putting girls in schools because their age of marriage gets delayed is 6 to 15 tons. It's much cheaper. So if you want to invest for climate change, then each one of us has to figure that we don't have to make better power stations, better electric vehicles, etc. All we need to do is put all the girls in our country into school. And if you, I'm sorry, this is out of sequence. Okay, so let me just do this. This is, other ways to reduce carbon emissions is to design our cities to need less transport, so that your places of work and your places of living are the same. And if you look at Atlanta, which is an advanced city in America, which is actually a huge city with this kind of 20 kilometers across, 30 kilometers across, and you compare it with Barcelona, you get actually a totally different approach to transport, mobility, work, and play. Okay, let me now close off by saying that technology for circular economy, for resource efficiency, has to be efficient, has to be durable so that you don't have to keep changing your car every year or your air conditioner, or conserving of energy. And you do that by miniaturization. You look at my phone. The computer in here is more powerful than the one which I did my PhD thesis on, which took a room about the size of this hall. So you can imagine how much you can reduce resources, and then you can dematerialize in this sense, and also you can share underused resources like Uber, like Airbnb, etc. So there are all kinds of ways in which you can achieve this, and the growth of resource productivity, how much you can get for a given resource, is also very important. And India is not doing too badly on that front. So the SDGs that all of you have heard about, the Sustainable Development Goals that all our countries, 195 countries have signed on to these, are now the major means for reducing our impact on climate and on species. And our way to do that basically is to start thinking in terms of connecting the dots, systems. How do we do not just one single resource, but all of them together? So this is essentially to bring together the basic needs, particularly of poor people, with the environment. You have to bring productive systems and consumption patterns together, and you need to have both the concerns of the rich and the poor taken care of. Sustainable jobs and sustained resources are really at the bottom of all this. And I can tell you, I was just talking to my colleague a minute ago on the phone, and he said this month's, our organization, which is a small NGO, this month we created 3,000 enterprises, small startups in rural India, each one of which creates 3 to 5 jobs. So the way to do that is, these are green jobs, jobs that essentially have a much lower impact on climate and on environment. So there are ways to do these things, but they're different from the way we've been doing them before. So they're considered rather inconvenient, particularly by governments and by business, but they are the future. Thank you.
That was Dr. Khosla for you. I don't need to say anything about his address. For me personally, I think every aspect of his presentation was an aha moment. It was amazing. Thank you, sir. The next section, it's called Leaders Talk. So basically, we had conceptualized this section, the segment, thinking that businesses are a core component, you can call them, of the society, and we cannot be talking about improving our environment without having the businesses or taking the businesses into account. So we thought of calling the large corporates, those corporates who have your net zero goals, becoming carbon neutral by 2050. We all keep hearing it. What are these organizations doing to reduce their emissions? because what they would be doing would ultimately be trickling down to smaller businesses and in the societies. We're going to learn from them. So we were going to have addresses from Carrier India. We have the MD of Carrier India, Mr. Sundar Narayana, with us. We were going to be joined by Ms. Tejashree Joshi of Godrej, but she couldn't join us in person. She has sent us her recorded address, which we would be playing later during the event. But for now, Sundar, please come. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can
Thank
we
you,
have
Shweta.
his presentation running, please?
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I first wanted to say thank you for the great presentation. I would request a big round of applause. I know some of us did, some of us probably didn't. So, great presentation, Doctor, and thank you. Like Shweta said, I represent a relatively large organization, let's put it this way. And but I'm here not to speak about my company or the organization that I belong, but from the HVAC organization perspective. Like Doctor said, I mean, there is a conception that, HVAC, air conditioners do play a big role in terms of carbon emissions, which is a fact. But at the same time, as an committed organization and a committed fraternity to which I belong, we are here to make sure that there is a real sustainable development. And air conditioners have become probably not a luxury anymore, but it's a necessity at the same time. So what do? It's a dilemma that all organizations in this HVAC space have to play with. And I'll share some of the trends that we are seeing in the HVAC space and something that we are working as Carrier organization. But before I do that, I actually wanted to convey my thank you to the organizing committee for having me here today. It's a great opportunity to interact with many of the stalwarts from different industries, policy makers, government officials, NGOs, right? So it's a great opportunity. It's a forum it's very unique. I go and talk, I present in many different forums, but it's always focused on one particular segment or an industry. There's probably very few, I'll say, industry body events like this where, we are coming together from different diverse group of organizations or policymakers. So thank you for putting this together. The other thing I noted was that if you see, we are talking about sustainability, and I was very happy to see the Bisleri bottle rather than a plastic bottle, right? I would have been really not so happy if I would have seen a plastic bottle. So again, to the organizing committee, thank you for keeping this in mind as well. So if I could request, the first slide, if, okay, I'm sorry, it's here. So what do we see? I mean, this is probably not new for any of you. India overall is at an inflection point. It's like my previous speaker also spoke about. India is going to see a big growth, a lot of development happening, right? All the macro indicators are definitely pointing towards one direction, which is just up north, in terms of exploding in terms of development. If you look at our demographics, it's at a very, the median age is only 28. We actually form a perfect pyramid in terms of the overall demography that we have from a population standpoint. We are going to have a lot of new development happening if we are going to reach the 30 trillion economy, that vision that we have as a country. It's estimated that there will be one Chicago getting built every year for the next 15 years, right? There is a lot of old buildings that we have in India. Like Sir said, that's going to get refurbished, remodernized. There's going to be more development happening there as well. It's not just about new development, but even modernizing the existing buildings as well. And from an energy standpoint, Government of India is also very focused on that. So obviously there is coming, a lot of standards are coming, regulations are coming to make sure that whatever goes inside a building is more energy efficient, right? So all the indicators are pointing that India will see massive growth in the next 20 years, which will mean a lot of consumption will happen and a lot of energy usage will happen as well. If you look at, I mean, I'm not sure how many of you know this, that buildings actually consume 40% of energy, okay? And obviously, the more the energy usage, the more the carbon emissions happen, right? And the industry to which I belong, air conditioning actually contributes 50% of that energy usage that goes into the building. So for high level, for all of you, I said building contributes 40% of carbon emission, and air conditioning contributes 50% of that 40%, so which means 20% of the carbon emissions that happens globally happens because of the air conditioning system that we have, and that's why Sir brought that up. Right? But what are we going to do about it? And that's what I'm going to cover in the next few slides. If you look at, as developers, M3M, thank you for putting this together. They are a large organization, respected organization, and they do a lot of development. And what we are seeing as trend is that a lot of our customers are now looking at making sure the new buildings that's getting developed are more smarter and green. So if you have more green buildings and smart buildings, 30% of that carbon emission can be reduced just by having a green building. So that's the request that as organizations we will have for our customers who are coming up with new buildings, because that will help drive better efficiency in the buildings and reduce the carbon emissions. So what's driving technology change? If you look at, there are basically three things that we try to put here, which is, one is changing scenarios. We want, a lot of organizations had a hybrid model. Now they want to bring back all their employees back to office, which will mean there will be more usage, energy usage getting higher, right? Organizations also have, like us, Shweta spoke about, we also have organizations like us have a net zero goal. So Carrier has a net zero goal of making sure we get there by 2050. But we also have an interim goal by 2030, and I'll talk about that. So there are obviously organizations looking at an overall sustainability goal as well. The codes and standards are being driven by the government of India, right? I mean, if you just look at in the last 10 years, just on the split air conditioners that many of you will have at home, the energy has gone up by more than 50% in the last 10 years, right? So every second year or third year, the government actually improves the requirements on energy efficiency. So that's helping drive the overall efficiency. And the last piece is technology. That's changing. So as organizations like us, Carrier, we are making sure that whatever new products are getting developed are more energy efficient. We are making sure that we come up with products with a greener refrigerant, right? Many of you will know that, the refrigerants that goes into air conditioning today in India have a higher global warming potential, GWP. So we are making sure that, we are using refrigerants which are low on GWP, right? So that's also changing as the technology changes. And the last piece around technology is around smart buildings, connected assets. So that's also helping drive better efficiency and lower carbon emissions. So those are the drivers, what we are seeing as in the HVAC industry fraternity, what we are seeing. These are just small metrics for you. I mean, if you look at in the last 10 years, air conditioning units would have got sold around 65 to 70 million units. And many of those units have been fixed speed. India has been a cost first kind of a industry, and many of our customers predominantly till few years back used to buy fixed speed units. And just by changing the technology from a fixed speed to an inverter, we would at least save 30% of energy. That's a simple arithmetic. So as customers, as consumers, I would urge all of us in our homes, in our offices, to make sure that we at least transition from a fixed speed units to an inverter units. That's bare minimum. I mean, if customers are worried about the ROI, it pays for itself. The inverter, if you just move on to the inverter technology, the payback is within a year, right? So that's the kind of benefits that you get, and obviously it brings, with inverter technology, lower carbon emission. So just by doing this, 18.4 million metric tons of carbon emissions can be reduced. Now, on the right hand side, what you see is on the refrigerant side. So I spoke about the HFCs, which is the higher global warming potential. If we move on to a greener refrigerant, which is HFOs, which organizations like Carrier and many of other competitors are also doing it, by doing that, again the carbon emissions will reduce, right? So those are things that we can definitely adopt quickly to make sure that we have a better sustainable development. Carrier, I switch on now to in terms of what we are doing as an organization. And it's not just about Carrier as an organization, many of our other competitors in this space are also doing it. So I just wanted to share a perspective of what's happening in the industry now. And just for all of you to know, Carrier has been walking the talk. We have been committed towards sustainability for many, many years. It's not just the talk of the town now, but for many years. We have been the founders of the air conditioning. We know that. And at the same time, we know that we have a big role to play from a sustainability standpoint for the future. Carrier has been the founding members of green building councils in many countries across the globe, including India. So, which means that we started promoting, talking about green building, sustainable development many years back. We were the first ones to start promoting inverter technology in India when many of our other competitors in this space were only promoting fixed speed. We did that, and at that time, the payback used to be much higher because the difference between the cost of a fixed speed to an inverter used to be much higher. We still promoted that. We still wanted to make sure that our customers understood the benefits of our inverter technology. And now, obviously, everything has caught up. I mean, everyone else is now moving towards inverters. So Carrier is a global leader in intelligent climate energy solutions focused on sustainable development. We are a $22.5 billion organization headquartered in the US. And we obviously now become a pure play HVAC organization. Till last year, we used to have other segments like refrigeration and fire and security business lines. But now it's all about HVAC, and that's the role we have. Like I said, we have an interim goal of 2030, what we call as the ESG goal. And we want to make sure that all our operations, we have more than 50 factories across the globe. We want to make sure all our factories are carbon neutral. We are also committed towards saving more than 1 gigaton of carbon emissions for our customers. We have gone public and shared this to all our customers. And we are tracking this. So we have a lot of initiatives around this. So we no longer are just a pure play product organization, but a solution organization. So we are working with our customers on their overall life cycle journey. So we committed to save more than 1 gigaton of carbon emissions in 2021. So in the last 4 years, we have done more than 50% of what we set out for by 2030. So already we are on track to make sure that we exceed the what we say for our customers. How are we going to do this? So the three main pathways that we are looking at is making sure that energy efficiency is the big play, right? Not just for us, but for the entire HVAC organization, across the globe, that we look at more energy efficient products, greener refrigerants, and more technology-focused products and assets, which means that we will be able to connect assets, make it into smart buildings. So that's the intent with which we are all working on. Renewable energy will also play a big part of it. Our factory in India, which is just not too far from here in Gurgaon, is a IGBC Platinum certified factory. It's a 42-year-old factory and IGBC Platinum certified. It's one of the very few factories in India, by the way, which is that old and Platinum certified. It's very easier for any building or any factory to get a gold or a Platinum certification if you are, coming up with a green project. For a factory like ours, which is 42 years old, to be a Platinum certified, it means a lot. We have more than 50% of our manufacturing operations, the energy being utilized, coming from renewable sources. And a lot of things we have done in the factory, and I would request if you are from here, we would definitely be happy to showcase what we have done from a sustainability standpoint in our factory operations. What we are also doing is to make sure that we have different solutions for our customers. Like I said, we are moving away from being a product organization to a solutions organization. We are looking at making sure we have solutions for our customers around modernization, which means retrofitting old buildings, old assets into a newer building. We are making sure we have upgrade solutions possible. So for customers who have installations which are 5-10 years old and they are now looking for upgrades, we have that capability as well as an organization. We have building management controls solutions available. And these solutions helps us make buildings more smarter. Make sure that the carbon emissions gets reduced in a smarter building. We have digital solutions. And the last one is obviously some of our customers would obviously like to have more solutions which is not capital intensive, where we go on a service model as cooling as a service. So we actually lease it out to our customers and make sure it works for them. And the last slide, this probably is my last slide, is around, we also have from a solution standpoint a full range of solutions available on a platform what we call as Abound, which means infinite. And the opportunity there is for our customers is to monitor the performance of their building, the different assets that goes into their building live 24/7. So whether it's around indoor air quality, whether it is around occupant assistant, net zero management, if our customers want to make sure that they want to track their net zero movement, we are able to provide solutions around that. The assets, the HVAC, air conditioning assets that they have, we can track that as well. And then the last one is more important, which is around predictive insights. So we are able to, by connecting assets in a building, we are able to see what problems could happen, and we can do prognostics, making sure that the assets do not actually I'll say the life of the asset can go up and they do not actually break down. So those are the benefits of having a solution like an Abound with us. So that's all I wanted to share with you. In terms of what we are doing as an organization, as an industry, and what we are seeing in the overall HVAC space. So thank you for having me here, and all the best for the rest of the day. I do know that you had more than 70 speakers in the last 2 days. It's great to see everyone here, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We are going to have 70 speakers. We had a program yesterday, and it's going to continue today. So it's going on. So thank you very much for the insightful, comprehensive address. We would be beginning the next panel discussions in a few moments. We have a surprise for you. We are going to launch the next edition of our magazine and a special magazine for school children. So I request Ruchika and Ashish to come on stage and please get it launched by our guests today. Do we have the magazines with us? Okay, take it, get it. Get the magazine. This is the latest issue of the CSR Universe magazine. And next we have, this is the first edition of the Green Universe. It's a special magazine for school children.
Yeah, so this is the Green Universe magazine. My team has worked extensively to find how school students can consume such kind of content which makes them aware about the issues which are very pertinent today. And this is the outcome of this thought process. This is going to be currently the quarterly, once a quarter we'll be doing, and we'll be trying to connect to schools, reaching to them, to the children with this magazine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say something. Can I? So thank you. I think it's okay. This is a great initiative for children, and it definitely resonates with me and with us as an organization. I do want to share this. Carrier has been promoting sustainability with young children for 18 years. So what we do is we actually sponsor a program called Green Your School, where children from different schools actually come up with sustainability initiatives that they want to implement in their schools. And this will definitely resonate. So thank you. And I have young children, so I'll definitely share it with them. No, thank you.
Sure, sir. We would in future we would like to feature those initiatives also in this magazine, so that students, college, school students also know what corporates are doing. That can be an inspiration to them also when they become a professional. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. So can I request Neha Sharma to please come on stage to felicitate the guests.
Once again, we have Ms. Neha Sharma from M3M Foundation. This is a token of appreciation from us for our guests. Small token of appreciation. Nancy?